Good morning, Double B. How you doing?
Doing well, boys. How about yourselves?
Doing well.
Super.
How do you feel about Randall Cobb on the Cowboys as a replacement for Cole Beasley?
I think they're very similar players. The difference is going to be with the run after catch. That's, I think, where you'll see Randall Cobb, that's where he's excelled in his career, is that former running back mentality, the special player that he is, that you can do a lot of things with him. You can move him around. You could put him in the slot. You could put him outside. You could put him in the backfield. They were very creative with him early in his career. Not so much these last couple of years. I think they need to get back to some of those things that made him special. But, when you're looking for a replacement, you're looking for a guy that can play underneath. You're looking for a reliable target that concentrates, makes plays. But the difference for him will be his ability to run after catch. With Cole Beasley, it was somewhat limited. With this guy, he's got those kind of traits that you love to have when it comes to converting third downs and things like that.
Now, they hosted Robert Quinn, who is under contract with Miami, and Eric Berry.
Sure.
How would you feel about those potential fits?
Well, I think the Eric Berry was more about medical. I think that was where, Will McClay, and kind of visiting with him a little bit about it, he was – I said, Eric Berry, and he says, I just hasn't played a lot of football. Bobby Belt from the NFL Network kind of described him, and I think this is a great way of describing him, is he's the safeties version of Sean Lee. So if you're a Tolo, you've probably heard me say that before, but I think that's really what he is. And, Will and I were talking about it is, there's not a lot of tape to evaluate fully on him, but you need to know the medical information about him. He fits in a way that's not like what Earl Thomas would be. I think Earl Thomas can play more down. If you're going to play single high and keep Xavier Woods on the field, then you want somebody that can play more of a down type of a player. And I don't know if I would want Barry doing that all the time. I think he's more of a guy that plays the back. I think he could tackle well enough and all, but I think you want him for the range and things like that. So that would kind of be a similar player to what you're looking at with Xavier Woods. But if you sign a guy like that, well, maybe you have those two back players, and then you take Frazier and Heath and make them down players, or you find a way to draft somebody in this draft where they have a couple of these safeties that look pretty inviting to do stuff like that. The Robert Quinn thing, I think, gives you a little bit of flexibility. If something were to happen, if you don't like the way that the Lawrence negotiations are going, it gives you a legitimate pass rusher. It gives you a guy that can play the right end. The under tackle, the right end are really important in this scheme. You have a rare rusher that's playing the left side. A guy like Reggie White was a left end rusher. Khalil Mack was a left end rusher. Michael Strahan was a left end rusher. Those guys are rare, and so that's what you kind of got with Tank. But if you could pair him with Robert Quinn, that would be great. But if Robert Quinn were to come here and you can't get a deal done with DeMarcus Lawrence, then you can move on from that and then at least legitimately have a rusher on your defensive line.
You still think this can be a 9 or 10 sack guy in Quinn?
Absolutely. I think, unfortunately, he plays in the scheme where when Wade Phillips came there, he's not a 3-4 stand-up guy. He's a guy that gets what they call a wide 9, and then he just rushes up the field, puts his hand on the ground. He wins with speed. He wins with quickness. He got it playing in if you look at last year with a pretty bad team, he just, he gets 6.5 sacks. So, I mean, you put him with some people around him that can help him. Is still capable of doing that. These rushers, they understand how to attack blockers. They understand how to break blockers down. That's the biggest problem. That's the thing that they always try and teach these coaches. It's technique. Okay, how do I set these guys up? That's why DeMarcus Ware was so good at it. That's why Lawrence has got that ability to kind of set a blocker up, run him up the field, get his weight on his outside foot, then bring him back underneath. Those are the kinds of things that you want a smart rusher, and Robert Quinn can surely do that.
Is there a compensation you'd be willing to give up to get him? Like, what is the number? What is the pick number?
Are we going to give up next year's pick or this year's pick?
Well, see, explain that, because they always say that next year's pick is less valuable, but it seems to me a first-round pick's a first-round pick.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. I mean, you have two fourth-round picks in this draft, this current draft. If Chris Greer, the general manager of the Dolphins, is willing to do something next year, and I'm not competing with myself, I'm willing to give him a fourth-round pick. That's kind of where I'm at. If I'm looking at this draft right now, I've got 2 4s. I'm looking at here, but I would more likely try and give him something later in this draft. I know next year that they're possibly I could get another compensatory pick.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, might be more willing to go with something a little bit higher than that. But yeah, to get this deal done, the Cowboys, the Saints, I don't know if the Saints are in the picture. I really, really don't. I'm hearing conflicting things there. I'm hearing that the Saints, are more interested in signing Cook, the tight end. That might come down the pike here pretty soon.
Yeah.
And then, or the flirtation with the Quinn trade, again, that's something that's going to have to be done by trade and then contract and all that stuff. So I don't know if the Saints are going to be willing to do that, but he is visiting the Saints on Monday. We'll see if the Cowboys do get in a competition. The Dolphins are surely hoping that there's competition for the player, but they clearly want to move the player on, so maybe you catch him at the right time.
Brian brought us DallasCowboys.com on the BuyerSafety.com hotline. Give us a reset of your scouting report on Malik McDowell, who they visited with, and
that's really, Sean, I think that's more the scouting report there coming out of college it was a very good one, but the problem is the medical stuff there is very train wreckish.
Yeah.
And so, that was another one of those, let's kick the tires. Let's see what we got here. I mean, okay, kick the tires. I mean, let's sign him. Let's maybe work him out. Let's do those things. I think they were more interested in seeing the medical stuff there than they were maybe signing the player.
But should we gather he's close to playing football?
No, I wouldn't gather that. No,
okay.
I wouldn't. I mean, it just sounds like to me that, again, this was about, okay, where is he at physically?
Yeah.
Where is he at mentally? What does he look like physically and all that? I think that's just these guys doing their due diligence, really.
So KT is going to join y'all's draft show today at 11.
Yeah.
And he wrote an article, and he was going through the visitors.
Right.
And are we taking from that there's a decent possibility it's looking like the Cowboys could move up, or were those targets more in the second round of 58?
Yeah, I think it's more like he's kind of giving you an idea. You always have to be ready because you don't know how a draft is going to roll,
yeah.
Especially when you're picking, you don't have a first-round pick. And the way to get back in this draft, to get back in the first round is A, trade one of your better players, B, trade next year's one to try and get back in. Those are kind of the two avenues. So you never know how it's going to, someone might call you and say, hey, listen, you interested in this pick at all? Because we always talk about the cutoff of where the first-round grades are. Potentially have somewhere between 18, 20 names in the first round. Once you get past, say the 22nd pick, you're talking around second-round players. So people are thinking, well, there might not be the value that we want there, even though I think this is a pretty deep draft. So, yeah, I think that, KT, what he's trying to do for you there is there's a possibility that you're going to have to move up. I think that if you Taylor Rapp, the safety from Washington, is a guy that's on their visit list. Ferguson from Louisiana Tech, the defensive end. I think those are guys that you're going to have to move up for. So they're preparing themselves that if in case they do have to move up, if they have to take that extra 4 that we were talking about, if they don't give it away in the Quinn trade, that maybe they take that 4 and something else and try and go up and get one of these guys that falls into that 40 range. I think that's really where they're kind of protecting themselves that way.
Who is the player, not for the Cowboys, it can be for anybody. Who are you in love with? Who's the guy that you're just infatuated with?
Well, in my draft magazine I'm doing that with the DallasCowboys.com is doing, we're putting it out. It should be out the first week of April, that we do every year. I have 11 pet cats is what I call these guys, and I did one
Dr. Evil
cat guy, huh?
Cat guy, and so we do one per position is what I do. But I just mentioned Taylor Rapp, the safety from Washington. I think of all the pet cats that I have, and this is a Bill Parcells term, is what this really is, pet cat guy. And so,
did Parcells have a cat?
Oh no, he just that was his way of
careful. Some of his terms you can't use in 2019.
Exactly. He was a little different there, but we were. He always talked about, oh, that's your pet cat, that's your guy, and so. But yeah, I mentioned Rapp. I really the Taylor Rapp from Washington. I think if you're going to go get a safety, I think he's the one. There's 4 safeties that are kind of in that, not really maybe late 1, second round range. I really do like this kid because I think he can play up or back. He tackles really well. He's really smart. When you watch him play, he doesn't get fooled on plays. He creates turnovers. I mean, there's all kinds of really positive things about it. I think this is a good safety class, again, from that first to second round kind of group. But Rapp would be the guy that I really, really do. I'll tell you another guy I really like a lot, and he runs really, really slow. But if you watch him play, he's a really good player. Is Elijah Holyfield from Georgia. He's the son of the
Vander's kid.
Vander's kid, yeah, Georgia. And yesterday he ran slow again. He ran the 4.8s. But if you watch his tape, this guy is really tough. And I mean, you can see he's old man tough because he will pass block. He does a great job of running. I mean, he doesn't avoid contact at all. He just tries to run through people, run over people. He catches the ball well enough. Georgia doesn't throw the ball to their backs a ton, but he does. He's got some complete back traits to him. But people are going to hate him because he runs a 4.8, but he doesn't play like a 4.8 guy. So don't get fooled all the time by the numbers. I mean, you could find guys, if you just watch the tape, you can find some guys that could help your team.
Brian Broaddus, former NFL scout, joined us here on 105 through the Fan. I don't know if you heard us talk Dak money a little bit earlier. Basically, if Russell gets his deal first, I mean, that could change things for Dak. But the other part is, when you're scouting someone, you've been scouted for a long time. If you don't know what they are after 3 years, don't you kind of already know them?
You don't say a lot of really smart things,
Thank
but
you.
that was one of the real smart things.
Appreciate that.
No, it was a good discussion, Chop. I'm just kidding you. It was. To me, I think that you're to a point where you have the quarterback or any position evaluated. The guy's a winner. There's no question about that. Would you like to be the first in on the deal? You absolutely would love to be the first in on the deal. You were kind of hopeful. Well, maybe by the time we get to Oxnard, that maybe that deal would be done. Again, this is things that you talk about, things you work about. I don't consider myself a numbers guy. I'm always like, watch the tape. Let's see what the tape tells me. Trust the tape. The award-winning podcast that we have. Those kinds of things. I feel like though that if there's a team out there that should trade their quarterback out every 4 years, it's this one. And I'll tell you why. Because this team's general manager is also the owner. The ramifications, and I know, Sean, you made a really good argument about, listen, I don't know if I want to do this, but then I don't know the alternative.
Right.
And I think that's what scares a lot of people in this. Like, okay, do I feel like that Dak is a $35 million a year player? Yeah, but, you know what I'm saying? So you get kind of in that mode where you're like, man, I don't know if the next guy is going to win me 35 games in the first 3 years of his career. Yeah. That's the scary thing. But a team like the Cowboys, where the general manager is the owner, then the fear of making those moves shouldn't bother you. But you should also think about, though, you know what? If we turn our quarterback over every 4 years, but we spend that money on other players. We buy the runner, we buy the offensive line, we buy the receivers, we buy the defensive players. That's the argument that people will say in building a team is when you allow so much cap room on one player, it affects the other ways you operate. And I didn't believe that at one time, but some really, really smart people have convinced me that if your scouting department is strong enough and you believe in their ability to find players, then by all means you should be trying to turn your until you get Drew Brees or until you get Tom Brady or until you get somebody that's one of these elite type quarterbacks. So you could go either way on this thing, and I think with the Cowboys, they're kind of in a difficult situation because they believe in Dak, but how much do you believe in Dak, and do you worry about signing Dak after what you've seen been happening with Lawrence? You guys were talking about waiting another year. Can you gamble? Well, can you gamble at not thinking, well, are we going to go through another holdout again here? And I'm not calling it a holdout, but an impasse, of like trying to sign a guy. With the experience, you gambled on Lawrence. You gambled it. Okay, prove to me you could do this. Well, he did it. And now you're like, well, wait a minute. Are we going to pay him? We're going to commit $20 million to you. How much more do you want? Right. And now you're in the same situation with the quarterback. Are you going to gamble that he's going to be, a $25 million quarterback, or is he going to be a $35 million quarterback? That's a big thing you have to go through. But I'm kind of looking towards if I trust my front office to find players, and then I could build around a quarterback. I'm kind of one of those guys that let's change these quarterbacks out every 4 years and see where we go.
Thank you as always, man.
Appreciate you, boys.